Hello, welcome to Chloethedev Unfiltered. I'm going to be continuing to go through the Ethereum 2.0 economic review today. This is my third or fourth video doing this. It's taken me a while to actually read this paper. As you can see, the paper came out July 16th, and it's now like October. So I'm trying to just get through it. Doing it through video helps me just kind of remember what I'm doing and keep at it. So the first time I went through it, I went through the executive summary and the introduction to the paper. The second video and third video, I had to cut it short because my dog had to go out. I did the background and framework, and then for this video, I plan to just quickly go through the economics of ETH 2.0. Up there, you can see my rocket pool ETH2 node has synced. So I think that the ETH2 node is probably synced as well, hopefully. It's only a Goerli, I think, node, so it should be synced. And then so after this, I might do a video on finishing up setting up my rocket pool node. But let's get to it. Starting maybe today or Monday, what I'm going to do is start going through a bunch of smart contract security papers. I really am enjoying just kind of going through these papers live. It helps. I go through the papers anyways. This helps me formulate my ideas better as I'm going through them. So, let's get started. Economics of ETH 2.0. ETH 2.0's proof-of-stake system relies on an incentive mechanism that encourages honest behavior and high uptime while penalizing malicious behavior. We will not spend substantial time detailing the mechanisms given the existing body of work. We will, however, extract the key factors and insights as they relate to our economic analysis. Participation. Becoming a validator in ETH2 requires locking up at least 32 ETH. A validator represents one discrete chunk of 32 ETH, and every additional validator requires another discrete 32 ETH. So, very simple, 32 ETH, get to a validator. You become a validator. To lock up their stake, the validator must send ETH to the deposit contract on the ETH1 chain. Importantly, this transaction is a one-way transfer. There's no two-way bridge. The ETH consumed by the deposit contract is no longer usable on Ethereum 1. As we will explore in a later section, this represents a significant impediment to investment from some institutional investors, along with the phase 0 lockup requirement. So I think this is where things like Rocket Pool could offer some sort of system. I mean, this is how all systems work, but with some derivative where you stake in the network and we're going to create some derivative that you can trade. You still have a huge lockup, but maybe if you only have stake, 6 ETH at a time or 5 ETH, if we can get that capital amount lowered, potentially less people will feel like there's this barrier to entry. We'll see though. Once the ETH is sent to the deposit contract, the validator is entered into a queue in the ETH 2.0 beacon chain and eventually begins validating blocks at designated slots in every epoch. As a refresher, the POS blockchain is divided into epochs with themselves made up of 32 slots during which validators vote on new blocks. In simple terms, validators are shuffled randomly into committees of equal size with a minimum of 128 validators at every epoch in such a way that each validator is in exactly one committee and votes exactly once per epoch. Effectively, they are allocated to one committee in one slot each epoch. So basically, it's a voting system where your validator will vote only once. That's kind of the very important part. If you vote twice, you'll get slashed. And each epoch, so one slot every epoch. You could see, this is kind of where, in my opinion, it keeps it relative. In simple terms, validators are shuffled randomly into committees of equal size with a minimum of 128 validators. So for security reasons, I suppose 128 is the minimum, but they're all going to be equal, okay? And they're all going to vote in each epoch only once per epoch. And yeah, you're only going to be in one committee. You're going to vote within that, and so yeah, very, very pretty straightforward. Like you get to vote once, nothing crazy. You get to vote a bunch of times, or anything like that. Validators are then incentivized to honestly participate in the validating process through a system of 3 major incentives: Rewards. So if you vote once properly, you get a reward. If you vote, you vote quickly and you vote on time. Penalties. So again, if you vote late, you get a penalty, which I would consider, if in this sense, since penalties are not slashing, I would consider a reward is your full reward, and then if you take too long to vote, there's a penalty on that reward, and then slashing is actually slashing your actual stake you have in the network. Maybe penalties. I guess they'll go in and design and go into each one. I love papers are awesome because you read and they always explain the rest of it later. The system is designed for honest behavior to incentivize honest behavior and consistent uptime without enforcing draconian penalties for minor offenses, which are sometimes out of the user's control, such as going offline for a few days. That's definitely going to happen to me a few times. Rewards. Validators are rewarded for honest and consistent validation in every epoch. Before diving into the types of rewards, a short aside on the finalization process of the chain. Epochs are processed and finalized according to a combination of the LMD Ghost and Casper FFG fork choice rules as described in the Casper paper. I did go through the Casper paper on these kind of reviews. You can check that somewhere on my page. But I should go through the Ghost paper as well. As such, epochs are first justified and then finalized on a timeline of checkpoints, which refer to the blocks at the first slot of an epoch. A validator at a certain epoch has a few responsibilities to ensure this process runs smoothly. So you can see combining Ghost and Casper. Ooh, that's a paper. That might, be the next paper I read. Ugh. Okay, let me just click it. Okay, it opens in a new page.
Sorry, I don't understand.
Is this, Donnie Ryan. Add draft.
All right, are you sleeping, Brother John, and more kids?
What are you doing?
Where's
Hey,
your
Google.
baby?
Stop. What? Anyways. Combining Ghost. I want to read this next. Oh, it's a long one. It's okay, I'll read it next. This looks like fun. Because we went through the Casper paper, so I feel like it would be kind of smart to now go through like the Ghost Casper combination, because then that would make sense as we're talking about what's going to be going into ETH2.0. So let's continue. Deposit contract on GitHub. Okay. Namely, the validator during their assigned slot in an epoch must attest to, vote for. So attesting is just you're voting for something. You're saying this thing's true or this thing happened. The last justified checkpoint called the source. The last epoch checkpoint called the target. And the current head of the chain. The block that has been proposed. The former two votes are part of the FFG finality rules, while the head vote stems from the LMD Ghost rule. Very interesting. I'm excited to go through the Ghost paper now. Sorry, I'm tired, thirsty. If a justified checkpoint receives a 2/3 supermajority vote, it becomes finalized. That makes sense. Similarly, when an epoch ends, if its latest checkpoint has garnered a 2/3 supermajority, then the checkpoint has justified. Makes sense. Lastly, validators must attest once per epoch. They are also occasionally pseudo-randomly selected proposed blocks. So validators are also block proposers, but they're pseudo-randomly chosen. And all pseudo-random means is that the randomness used is part of the network and it can be decided after. When this happens, and it can be figured out after, When this happens, they must propose a block at their designated slot and provide an attestation as well. With this context in mind, there are 6 types of rewards available per epoch, including whistleblower rewards based on the order of operations of epoch processing. That's pretty important. That's how you can get paid. So you have the source reward, an FFG vote on the last justified epoch block. You have the target vote, an FFG vote on the latest epoch, the checkpoint block. You have the head vote. You have the LMD Ghost vote on the chain head. You have the proposer incentive. This is an incentive that is given to the proposer of a new block once that block is finalized. So I guess every validator once per epoch will vote on the FFG. We'll do the source vote, target vote, head vote, and then once per epoch, I suppose you will also be a proposer. Then you have the Attester Incentive. This is an incentive rewarding the timely inclusion of an attestation in the chain. So basically, when you attest to something, when you vote to something, your rewards go down as your attestation distance, or as the time you've taken from the first time this attestation has been seen on chain to when you also attest to the same information. So you want to attest quickly to get the highest rewards. You also get a whistleblower reward, which I think will be one of the coolest things, as different clients probably will implement, I would assume, different ways to find whistleblowers, which would be a good thing. A reward for providing a proof that a proposer or a tester has violated a slashing condition. While this reward is typically split between the reporter and the proposer who includes the proof in a newly proposed block, in phase 0, this reward is entirely awarded to the proposer. So if you report a violation and a proposer who includes the proof, I guess someone could report a slashing condition and someone else could actually propose and put the proof on chain. And there's a way to eventually pay out different people for that. But right now it's all the same person, that's down here. That's fine by me. I mean, for now I feel it could be the same clients. Aside from the whistleblower reward, all other rewards are based on a concept called the base reward, which is derived from the following formula. Base reward equals your effective balance times, I think this is actually the effective balance of your individual effective balance. Base reward factor is a constant that effectively determines the magnitude of rewards for all validators. And then the total balance times base rewards per epoch. And then base reward, total balance, the sum of the effect. Yeah, so this is the balance of all, this is your balance. Okay, so you have 32 ETH at the beginning. This is base reward factor. So this is the factor that all validators should be getting at this point in time. This is how much rewards should be given out in this epoch. And this is the total amount of ETH that is in the entire network at this point in time. And that'll kind of give you what the base reward is for, I guess, your individual validator. I suppose it would be in each epoch. I don't know, but yeah. Yeah, sorry. It's right here. Base rewards for epoch is another constant reflecting the number of ways the base reward is rewarded per epoch. Importantly, the constant that has the largest impact on rewards and thus on expected yield on network influence is the base rewards factor. Shifting this variable up or down will have effects on the amount of ETH staked, as explored in section 10. Now we get into penalties. When validators run their validator clients according to specification on machines that meet the condition requirements, and this is where it's important because if you don't meet the specified requirements, your attestation distance could be lower because your machine might be slow and not able to input the attestation or the vote quickly enough, and therefore you're just not fast enough, and therefore you don't get as much rewards. And not getting as much rewards is the same as losing out, because if everyone else keeps getting more rewards and you're not getting as much, you're not going to have as much stake in the network, and you're going to lose out on providing security. So it's very interesting. You also have to maintain high uptime, or else you're going to lose out on rewards. They should only worry about the rewards outlined above and see a steady stream of ETH rewards accumulating over time. And when I have run a node, it was very simple. I mean, you just run the node, you throw the ETH in, you get the ETH deposited, you run the node, you show that you have your keys, and then you see your ETH tick up. It's actually very simple. Ensuring that your network is secure, that you're staking securely, I think that's some more of the issues that might arise. I want to try and see if I can do some private validation, some validator privacy type stuff. Why not? However, if a validator fails to meet their responsibilities, they will incur penalties that are proportional to the reward they would have obtained for executing on those responsibilities. That's important to note. They are proportionate. Proportional. Given this penalization model, the penalties are largely aimed at validators who are active but are offline, as opposed to slashing, which penalizes malicious behavior. So penalties are meant to specifically speak about, oh, you're offline a bit too much, we're going to penalize you for that. But slashing your stake, actually cutting out your stake, is more for doing something malicious, actively trying to go against the platform, like voting twice or voting on the wrong information. In short, validators receive penalties equivalent to the base reward when they fail to attest to the source target, and head in each of the first 3 votes described above. So if you fail to vote, or you vote too late or whatever, you will get penalized equivalent to what you would have gained. And it's kind of like people will gain that reward and you won't. So you can actually get penalized as well. And that usually happens, from what I've seen, is when the network needs you to be online. They're like, hey, penalizing you to say, hey, get your node back online. Inactivity leak. Yeah, so this is what I was just talking about. There's one special condition with regards to penalties. If the chain is unable to finalize for a period of 4 epochs, as happened in Badasha, it enters an inactivity leak mode. In this mode, validators that are offline and are not voting are hit with an inactivity leak penalty that increases quadratically for every checkpoint that is not finalized. This could wipe you out. The intention of this mechanism is to address a scenario where a large number of validators, let's say a third of the validators, go offline. The dreaded World War III scenario. The leak mode then increases the ratio of online to total validators above 2.3, so we start finalizing again. So this happened in Badasha. Basically, there was an issue with one of the clients. A bunch of nodes came offline, which meant there was less than 2/3 of the network that was online. There was no finalization, but there was liveliness in the chain. There was still things happening. Epochs were going through, just not being finalized. And so basically, if you were a node that had the issue, you were offline. Your stake was getting slashed or penalized, and so people who were still online had a higher ratio of ETH to the total ETH in the network. And once it went back to above that 2.2/3 level, the network started finalizing again, and everything was fine. I had my node running at the beginning of Madasha. I did get penalized. I was running a NIM node though, so I think I got penalized though because I had to go on vacation, so I just shut my laptop, and so I thought, oh, I'll run it again later. And obviously I got penalized, and then it was just a hassle and an issue. And then we get into slashing, like full out. You did something bad, you need to be slashed. Excuse me. Whereas penalties are mainly intended to incentivize honest validators to stay online and maintain their clients. Slashing is primarily designed to make it prohibitively expensive to attack the ETH2.0 chain. There are 3 ways to get slashed. Double proposal, so you propose, 2 separate blocks, which, you can't do that. Surround voting. So this gets kind of confusing. Sorry. But surround voting is when a tester, so a voter, you're voting on the state of the network, makes an FFG vote that surrounds or is surrounded by a previous FFG vote they made, making it unclear which version of reality they are attesting to. So, I went through this in the Casper paper. It gets a bit difficult to understand what's going on, but basically, vote normally. Don't try and do crazy things and make it unclear what you're doing, and you'll be fine. And so, for most cases, your client will do this for you, I suppose. But it's interesting to figure out, how could attackers take over someone's client and, make a node do one of these 3 things. And then there's double target vote. And a tester casts a vote for 2 separate target blocks at the same epoch. So above, we said you can only vote once. If you vote twice in the same epoch, you will get slashed. Okay. When a validator gets slashed, a few things happen. First, the validator is forced to exit the chain, ensuring any attack cannot be repeated. So first things first, the chain proves you've been malicious. You're out. Second, your stake is penalized. So you can lose a little bit of ETH, you lose a lot of ETH, you lose your entire stake. And then I guess it depends on how many other validators are being. Yeah, so it depends how malicious the attack is. So the magnitude of each individual slashing is proportional to the correlation of all slash stakes, making it extremely expensive for validators to coordinate large-scale attacks. For example, if 1/3 of all validators committed a slashable offense in a similar period of time, they lose their entire balance, which is like crazy. It is worth noting that in all these cases, the offender needs to be caught in order for the slashing process to be triggered. This is where the whistleblowers are rewarded as described above. So you are going to have whistleblowers making sure that the network's being followed appropriately, which I would assume will be built into most clients, but you never know. And let's say you're the fastest person to submit the proof saying that something was wrong, you'll get paid extra. So the whole idea is if you want to make sure the network is running smoothly, just ensure that you're looking at other nodes to make sure they're running smoothly, and you can start submitting proofs saying that these people aren't doing the right thing, and they'll get slashed, and you'll keep the network secure, and you'll get more ETH. And as long as you're running an honest node, your increased amount of ETH will be something that secures the network as well. So costs. The rewards, penalties, and slashings described represent the system's mechanisms for incentivizing proper validator behavior and regulating ETH issuance in the network. This is one side of the yield equation from the user or validator perspective. The other side corresponds to the cost to interact with ETH 2.0. Becoming a validator for ETH 2.0 requires running a client, which can be done by the validator or can be delegated to a third-party service, typically for free. So my thing is, so you have to run a beacon chain, right? I plan on running a beacon chain personally at home in my status, NIM client, whatever. That's my goal. I also plan on running a mail server, so when I'm messaging on status, I could be keeping my own messages. I think that'd be pretty cool. In that, I think that, you know how Rocket Pool has an ETH1 node and an ETH2 node and all that. I think that it'd be pretty normal for status to offer a similar type of setup in their desktop wallets, and I think that's how I would want to run my personal node if I can get that done. So yeah, if you don't want to run your own beacon node, you could connect to someone else's beacon node with no issues, like how now you connect to Infura. But people will probably be running their own validators, I would assume, on their own computers at home. I hope to see a future of ETH where everyone can run a validator on like an old cell phone for now, like especially ETH phase 0. Why not run a NIM node on an old Android phone for now? Keep it at home, plugged in all the time on your Wi-Fi. As the technology gets better, maybe phase 1 can still be on a phone. As we get like Starlink put up, internet in the sky and all that, internet and world globally and with satellites. And maybe with phase 2, it would be too much data to keep on a phone. But I mean, why not push for it? If everyone could keep a node on their phone, I think it'd be an amazing thing. I know most people say it's not possible. I get it, but it could be possible. It could be. Especially if you kept it at home. Let's see. Structurally, the client software is split into two components: the beacon node and the validator client. The beacon node is responsible for talking to the network of nodes and maintains the view of the beacon chain. That would be what I would consider to be similar to an ETH1 node. It looks at the ETH1 chain and it runs the ETH1 chain and keeps all the state in your computer. So I personally consider the beacon chain to be similar to what you get in ETH1, but obviously it has a very basic job. There's no actual state. It's just keeping like the chain, like what's doing what, just hashes the chain. Validator clients, on the other hand, handle the logic of validation. So they separated these two things out into two different tasks, I guess. Proposing and attesting blocks, and can support one or more validators. So one client can support more than one validator node, which are validators are stakes of 32 ETH. So based on interviews with Ethereum Foundation researchers and client teams, we estimate that each beacon node could potentially hand up to 1,000 validator clients. So when I think of it for me, I want to run a beacon node locally and I want to run a validator client, but not everyone needs to be running a beacon node. So, for the Marma J Foundation, I'd like to run one. I'd like to let anyone that wants to connect to it. But the eventual goal would be to get a bunch of people trusting that will be online all the time, run the node, and provide kind of an Infura-like service for free to people who need to connect their validators to the network. Deployment types. Cost of participation in validation will depend on the type of deployment selected by the validator. With certain deployment types suiting some validator profiles more than others, there are broadly 3 categories of ways to participate in ETH2 validation, with several hybrid possibilities and intersections. Do it yourself, which is usually the way you want to get started, in my opinion, on a testnet. So Madasha, for example, you can just jump into the Madasha docs. I have a paper where I was kind of going through the NIM docs and all that. So pick a client, go through the docs, start downloading the stuff, and just start running something. It's all testnet stuff. It'll get you involved. So compared to F1 mining, validating F2 is far less resource intensive. You don't need some fancy computer. You can use a laptop. You can use any kind of Linux distribution. Work very easily. No ASICs are needed. As a result, individual validators can choose to run the software themselves, either on a hardware or cloud setup. So you can use DigitalOcean Droplet. You can use whatever you want. So hardware. Validating on ETH 2.0 requires running the ETH 2.0 client as well as an ETH 1 client, because you got to look at the chain and make sure things are going well. Given that the ETH 1 and the chains run in parallel. While an often touted goal of ETH 2 is to enable validation on devices and as inexpensive as a Raspberry Pi, it is still unclear, given the lack of multi-client testnets. And from what I've seen, it's already happened. Ethereum on ARM has synced the Ethereum 2 client on a Raspberry Pi. So phones, Raspberry Pis, all that should be more than accessible to get people started. Other more suitable options include a dedicated desktop, which I have a dedicated server I use, or dedicated node service like DApp node. Importantly, these systems should be dedicated for the purpose of validation to minimize risk of interruption, and precautions should be taken for electricity and internet disruptions. So for me, I do have an old computer. I use an Ubuntu server. It is very slow, so it's not something I would use for professional staking or anything like that. But I am going to use a rocket pool node, like I said, which I consider, so staking pools, which is rocket pool. So we'll talk about that soon. So you can run it hardware-wise, or you can run it through the cloud. Staking as a service. On the other end, you might prefer to delegate staking to a service provider. We expect this option to come in several flavors. On one hand, a validator may want to be fully serviced. Others may prefer custodying their stake with a custodian while connecting in via API to run their own validator client. We anticipate 2 prominent trends for staking as a service. Popular exchanges will offer it for their retail clients, accepting stakes of all sizes. This will likely represent a significant gateway to staking for many retail users. You just deposit into an exchange, you start staking. For institutional investors and large ETH holders, opting for staking as a service to reduce technical and balance sheet risk. While fees for retail clients via exchange might be quickly commoditized and trend lower, based on interviews with infrastructure providers, we expect fees for institutional solutions to range between 10 to 15% of earnings. So good to know. It seems as though if you want to just have someone else stake for you, you're looking at least 10% you're losing on rewards, but you don't have to deal with the headache of doing it yourself. The cost of doing it yourself, if you only have one node, might greatly outweigh the cost of 10% of your rewards if you only have 1, maybe 2 nodes. And then you have staking pools, which is where I would like to get involved to keep things as decentralized as possible while still reducing some of the risk or decentralizing some of my risk for now. A common model for ETH1 mining for individuals who do not run large-scale mining operations is to participate in the mining pool. Similarly, staking pools will exist for ETH 2.0 participation, while DIY models above are all reserved for validators who have 32 ETH or more. Staking pools can accommodate validators who have less than 32 ETH. So, for example, in the staking pool Rocket Pool, you can kind of mix the three of these together. If you have 16 ETH, you can be a node operator in Rocket Pool, which will provide a staking as a service for people who have less than 32 ETH, which will charge fees of 10-15%, and those fees will go to the Rocket Pool node operators who are pretty much doing this first service, where you're pretty much running a node, and therefore people who have less than 32 ETH are able to pay this 10-15%. So I think it's pretty cool. It offers multiple services in one. Staking pools can accommodate validators who have less than 32 ETH and want to participate in a decentralized way, as opposed to relying on centralized exchanges. We expect several forms of staking pools and different methods of participation here as well. For example, Rocket Pool, one of the more prominent, near fully decentralized pools built for ETH 2.0, will function as a marketplace for staking, with demand-side users enabled to pool their stakes and supply-side node operators performing validation on behalf of those stakes. That's what I was talking about down there. We expect pools to charge similar, although slightly lower rates than software as a service providers. So again, probably around here, but a little bit less in pools. So in my opinion, I don't know why you'd use this when you can use this in a decentralized way and pay less, but who am I to know? Takeaways. In sum, from a validator perspective, there are a few key endogenous parameters and exogenous forces that have substantial impact on the economics of the network. In terms of endogenous variables, the base reward factor is the most significant parameter from an extra protocol perspective. The percentage of online validators and the price of ETH have a large impact on the rewards and penalties, while correlated malicious behavior has a large impact on slashing. Lastly, validators should pay close attention to their validator setup, as optimizing costs will have a direct impact on their net yields. So yeah, that's it for chapter 5. I'll be going through the model walkthrough they use to model the economic incentives for this specific paper. Next time, I'll probably be doing this specific paper till I'm done, Monday to Saturday, so I'm taking Sunday off. Tomorrow morning, I'll be going live playing cello at 9 a.m. in the CryptoVoxels, Marmaday Gallery in CryptoVoxels, so feel free to join up on that. Later on today, I am going to be finishing my Rocket Pool node. I'll be live on this channel doing that. And then I might start the consensus diligence papers as well. I haven't decided yet. I'm probably going to do Rocket Pool first and see how I feel. Bianca's out for the day with a friend, so I kind of have some time. But yeah, hope everyone enjoyed going through the paper. If you like the paper, I linked the paper in the comments of this video or whatever, in the description. So you should probably read it yourself instead of hearing me ramble. But that's about all.